if you're showing that the buyer might know more about the product than you, which buyers are extremely informed these days, then they're not going to see you as competent. If they feel like your agenda is not really supporting them and you're not showing concern and candor, and they feel like maybe you're saying something like, oh, I think the price is going to be going up, and then the price is not really going up, which sometimes happens when people try to create urgency. It's
Mm.
completely destroy the trust that you could be trying to build in the relationship.
Hey, everybody, welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Stefanie Boyer from Bryant University. We had a great conversation. Part 1, we were talking about authenticity. This time, we're going to talk about persuasion. Please make sure to check the show notes for her bio and all the things she does. I mentioned in part 1, it'll be in the show notes. There's so many things. TEDx speaker, winning awards from AMA for Sales Professor of the Year, co-founding and creating AI technology programs, teaching the future of sales, so many things. Let's dive into this though for here and now and talk about persuasion. Dr. Stefanie, are you ready to talk about persuasion and sales processes?
I am so ready to talk about persuasion. Absolutely. Yes.
Now, what's interesting, and obviously we have to set the foundation for this and talk about authenticity first, because it doesn't matter what sales tactics and strategies and sales process you give to someone. If they don't know who they are, they don't know what sales is really about and why they're there, then it's probably either going to fail or feel really gross to the person on the other end of it, right? So we have to talk about that. But I know this is the part that you get excited about and talk about the most, and is the sales process, and obviously getting into that. And so let's dive into that. You mentioned in the first part talking about just really seeing sales as something you're helping people, you're providing a service, leaving people better than you found them, which is the way that I look at it. How do you go about either building that sales process or teaching your students about that sales process that can work to effectively get the right people to move forward?
There are so many methods and processes out there when it comes to training sales. And if you look at a lot of them are very similar. I think perhaps sometimes people want to publish a new book and then they might tweak something. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the conversation that you're having and helping. And I think understanding and helping learners capture that mindset that selling is about helping is the foundation that's going to guide the entire sales process, right? You have a lot of salespeople that go out there and they think that they're on Shark Tank and they need to just pitch, right? And it's practice your pitch and get out there. And it's like when you are getting a presentation, like buyers don't want to see the presentation. They don't want to be pitched to. Buyers really want to have a conversation. They want to be understood. And so if you take the mindset of the whole goal here is to help, then when you go into the conversation, you're going to ask questions that are going to get at how can I really help you? How can I understand you? Are you the right person that can decide on this for your organization? And so using any kind of process, I know in the sales programs, we talk about when they're going through the sales method, it's opening the call, the approach and the strategies, and then discovery or needs ID. And then it gets into presenting value based on what the client wanted, handling objections along the way, and closing. And that's really that live conversation that they're practicing. I also use Medic in the classroom to try to help students understand if they're going to go out and prospect, to make sure that they're contacting the people that have authority, that have a problem, to do their research and to really follow that process as well. But at the end of the day, everything comes down to how can I help? And if this is somebody that you can't help, it's not somebody that you should even reach out to.
So how do you translate that in those fundamentals into helping people in the classroom understand that, prepare and practice especially considering they don't know ultimately where they're going to go and what they're going to be selling down the road. So you can only deal with now and how you give them some applicable situation to go through.
So we talk about even trying to get a job. And when you're in a job, it's really a sales call. But the thing that you're selling is you're selling yourself. And it starts with trust and building up trust. And what are some of the fundamental components that make up trust, and trying to be consistent and reliable, trying to be honest in the conversation, trying to show that you have a good character. People can really rely on what you're saying and what you're doing. You have a certain level of competence along the way, that you know what you're talking about, especially if you're talking about yourself. And so we talk about some of those items that make up trust, and what are some of the things that we can do to build up trust in a relationship, but then also diminish trust in a relationship. And I find it very helpful for them to understand that everything that we learn and we talk about in selling and persuading and trying to help people, it isn't just about being in a sales role, it's every relationship that they're in. And so over the course of the semester, when we talk about how to create better relationships that are more trusting and the things that you can do, then they start to come back and then they say, "Oh, I used this when I went to dinner, my parents came into town. And now we have this like new vacation that we're setting up." And they're so excited that I actually asked them some questions. Or it's somebody that they're dating, and then they're like, "Oh, I used some of these strategies and we started having a fight, but then I used these listening skills and some of the objection handling techniques to understand the real root of the problem. And I realized that I was totally off on what I thought the problem was. And when we addressed the problem, then we just got over it. And my relationship is better now." And so it's really neat. And I think when they understand that the selling skills that they learn are really relationship skills that they can use with anyone, I think they start to lean into it and they realize that there's actually a bigger opportunity than just a class that they're taking in college or just a job that they're trying to get.
So wait, so you're telling me the fact that I can't get my parents or family to agree on vacation stuff because I've been using the same pitch deck and the same discovery questions and closing tactics and upfront contracts. If I show you the 19 benefits on these 83 slides for why you should take me on vacation, then is there any reason you wouldn't take me on vacation today? Right? If you think about it, right? Because I'm listening to you talk, and all of it, I agree 100%. This is where
Sure.
it's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's H to H, it's human to human, it's all relationships, it's all life, it's all exactly what you said. And then I'm thinking, like, okay, but what do people in sales think they're supposed to do from a process standpoint?
Mm,
Right?
mhm.
Like the pitching stuff. I'd never heard it put in that frame, but like again, people think they're going on Shark Tank and their job is to pitch, and they've got to do slides, and they need a demo, and they need a brochure, and they need no. People sold for millions of years without a PowerPoint slide deck and a screen share. Like that's not what it takes. So I love hearing you talk about that, and not just in sales, but in all kinds of applications.
Sure, sure. And one of those foundational elements of trust is concern and showing concern
Mm.
for others, right? "Hey, mom, what's going on? What's happening with you lately? Tell me about your day." And then all of a sudden, can you imagine if you were in college and you started having that conversation with a family member and they're like, "What is going on? I'm usually the one trying to figure out what's happening in your life and you actually care about me." And then imagine the possibilities that open up when like your kid actually shows concern and care about you, especially when they're in college and they've got so much going on. It's just unexpected. So it's neat to see some of the stories that unfold there.
And for anyone listening to this, if you aren't doing that, and that's normal, right? I feel like it's definitely more in this day and age. I think with technology and the gaps and separation and spending more time virtual than in person, let's say, like especially post pandemic. But if that's you and you're like, I will start doing that, I think that's great. Realize that at first, everyone's going to freak out, right? I see a lot of people do that. You go to your parent or you go to a family member and say, "Hey, tell me, you seem stressed. What's going on?" I'd be like, "Okay, what do you want?" They're
Yes.
thinking something's up, and hopefully there isn't, and it's not manipulation versus persuasion, which is something we could talk about.
Mm,
But be prepared for people to freak out when you actually care and actually listen, because no one seems to care and no one seems to listen to a lot of people in their life, right?
mhm. Absolutely. And I've
And
heard so many salespeople even tell me that they get on a call with a client and they're listening, and then all of a sudden the sales call has turned into a therapy session. But sometimes they say, you know what, I've got to be there for the person. And now they understand that I understand them. And we'll continue the conversation geared towards what we need to. But if they're so focused on a major challenge that's happening, if you can be there for that person, there's a lot of value in that.
I have said it for years and years to groups and teams, is that when you do sales right, and I will use that word versus wrong, when you do it, it should feel like therapy sessions often with your prospective clients, where you've created this space of trust where they're sharing things with you, where you get off the call and you're like, I can't believe they just told me that about whatever it is. And they're seeing you as somebody they trust more than just a salesperson. When you do it right, they're beyond like their defenses and their walls. And I love what you said about the concern, right? Because I think about empathy and I think about listening, but the concern is also a part of that empathy pillar, which is I'm concerned about you. I
Mhm.
want the best for you, and or I want to know what's going on with you. And then like I'm here for you first, and then whatever you're selling second. So you talked about that as far as like the building the trust. Obviously, the opposite could be simply stated, but you also said something about you can diminish the trust, which is obviously really important for the sales process. What are the ways that salespeople generally diminish and or screw up the trust part?
It's really looking at the opposite of those things. So if you look at the candor and the concern and the character and the consistency and all the other words that start with C that show that you're trustworthy, which is the opposite, right? Like the competence. If you show up to a meeting and your technology isn't working, or like you're selling technology and the technology is failing and you don't know how to get the technology to work, or you show up and you've forgotten things, or you've gone to the wrong location for the meeting, all those things, if you can if you're showing that the buyer might know more about the product than you, which buyers are extremely informed these days, then they're not going to see you as competent. If they feel like your agenda is not really supporting them and you're not showing concern and candor, and they feel like maybe you're saying something like, oh, I think the price is going to be going up, and then the price is not really going up, which sometimes happens when people try to create urgency, and
Mm.
completely destroy the trust that you could be trying to build in the relationship. Yes, so many things like that. Just looking at consistency. And if your buyer reaches out to you and they just can't seem to get a hold of you, and it's been a couple days, then they feel like maybe they can't rely on you and they don't know if you're going to be there for them when they need it. So keeping those open channels of communication and being responsive is really important. We actually did a study looking at social media, and if you are not responsive within 24 hours, then consumers did not trust in your brand anymore. And with all the challenges that we have in sales and all the different ways that we're getting pulled in different directions and all the channels that people can reach out to us from our email and text and Slack channels and LinkedIn and so many ways, it can be really hard to be consistently responsive with our customers.
So we've talked about trust. Obviously, trust is this fundamental piece that you have to have before basically someone's going to listen to you as an authority of someone who can help them, right? As that guide and putting them in the place of they're the hero and it's all about them. When we look at what causes people to not buy, whether it's B2C or B2B, again, it's H to H, so it doesn't matter so much at some level. What are you seeing for other reasons people don't buy, or maybe I mean, I know we talked about service and helping, but where that intersection with what buyers really want from a salesperson to move forward beyond the trust step.
Well, there's so many reasons that people don't buy, and especially right now where many budgets have been completely frozen or cut, or people are getting laid off. So I'm seeing a trend for sure right now where you might have someone that's new in a role and they're afraid to make a big purchase because they haven't been there very long yet. And they're afraid to make the wrong decision, or you see so many people getting put on a PIP, right? And so they're on this performance plan, performance improvement plan, and they're just afraid to do anything. And so they're in this decision paralysis where they really
Mm,
have to feel like you understand them, that they can see without a doubt that you're mitigating any risk of moving forward, but really understanding the problem, the concern, and there is a roadmap in order to get to where they want to go. Maybe there's some guarantees or there's some free trials. Right now, for salespeople, if you can mitigate risk, I think that that is really valuable. There's a lot of technology products that are out there that are brand new. And so, if you look at these technology adoption models that are out there to see who those innovative people are, the ones that are willing to try new technology products, that's a small subset of the population of all the people that are buying. And so some people just don't want to be the first ones out, especially with all these new AI products and tools that are out there. Nobody wants to be the test subject. So it's challenging to get people to buy on if you're a pioneer. And there are a lot of pioneering companies right now. And it's
yeah.
totally changing the way that people sell and do business and are operating. Look at some of the generative AI products that are out there now. And sometimes it's just hard to tell because there's so many choices, and that we have this like decision paralysis because there's too many
Yeah.
things to choose from. And we're just like, you know what? There's too many options. I can't choose one. I don't know how it's going to go for me if I choose this one over that one. So I'm just not going to do anything. So there's all these other reasons that people are not buying outside of just that sales conversation that they're in as well.
And I love the way you put it. And then obviously the others are examples, which is mitigating risk. What buyers don't want to do in general for their own reasons, their own personality, behavior types, and all kinds of different factors that are important, but they just don't want to make the wrong decision or a bad decision. Or if they're in a business, they don't want to make a career limiting or a career ending decision or move. And so again, you went from free trials and mitigating that risk to also there's the early adopters who are more likely to take a risk and try something, and then people who just they don't want to be the first crash test dummy test pilot of something, right? And so and then how do you help with that? And then again, if there's too many decisions, the challenge is how do I pick the right decision? And then a lot of times you're not even selling against an incumbent, you're selling against status quo, which is it's just safer to do nothing than to
Mhm.
do something, right?
Right. And so at that point, you have to show them the risk profile associated with doing nothing and really
Yeah.
help them with questions to understand what that future would look like if they didn't move forward. And so maybe right now things are okay to not make a change, but in 6 months, what is that going to look like? In a year, what is that going to look like? What is happening to people that are not making a change and making a move? And how far are they going to get behind? Will they be able to recover that? Is it going to be too late at that point?
So this is the Authentic Persuasion show. This is the persuasion episode. It is not the manipulation episode. And so, where is that balance though? Because I agree with you about helping someone see the future of not making a decision versus that. How do you go about that or teach people to do that where it's not manipulation, it's not false scarcity, it's not fear mongering, it's not making things excruciating, painful, and out of proportion to what's real, but helping people buy versus the nothing option. Like, where's that
Sure.
balance between the persuasion and the manipulation with that tactic specifically? Because I agree with you, but it's a dangerous thing. If you do it wrong, it's going to cross the line.
Sure, sure. And it starts out with that foundation of trust and showing that you were really there to help them and to authentically really be there to help them and to use examples and to use data and to use what we know that's out there in order to inform the decisions. And now there are so many tools that are out there to help us to get access to real-time data to help buyers to be able to make the right decisions that they can really feel good about.
It makes sense. I think the key is what you said. I really love that, which is built on the foundation of trust, like real trust on a real concern focused relationship building. And then the transparency of the data. It's like, I'm not making this up. This is your data, or this is what it shows. Like this is your situation. I'm not
Mhm.
making this up for you. And so how do you help the students do that? Or how have you found to educate them on that so they can use the right approach, right? From the right side of the line, use their powers for good and not evil in their future sales career.
And really helping the buyers to understand what the options are and trying to filter it down to just a few options, right? So if you
Mm.
feel like you have 8 or 10 or more options, it might be so challenging for you to really make that choice because you're like, there's just too much, right? It's that decision paralysis. But if
Yeah.
the students can actually be that trusted advisor and to help understand truly what the challenge is and truly what those options are and think about like, the pros and cons between them and to make the right decision, even if it isn't going with you. But knowing that you help them make a right decision and you've built so much trust that perhaps in the future when you are the right choice, that buyer will go with you. But really helping them to make decisions and using data in order to do that, using data and understanding financials in order to get to understand truly what's happening with the buyer and what their choices are, helping them understand their choices, helping them see what the future could look like and what other people are doing, really being that consultant is what we're trying to get the students to do. And we do that by helping them have conversations that get into what are the questions, to listen, to understand, and to show compassion for their buyers.
And layering all of that on top of the transparency and the data, and really from a fact-based, let's say, sales process. When you get to that part, like, here's the numbers and the data. And then there's another part where you mentioned it, but it's so important, which is maybe even if they don't go with you, but what's the best decision for them, or maybe it's down the road, is coming from that place of abundance, that there's more than enough out there and you don't need this one person to move forward, or hopefully you don't. And you don't need to trick this one person or pressure them into buying right now versus what's the right thing for them, right?
Exactly, because we also train our students, you don't want to trick someone into buying from you because if you've manipulated them and they bought from you, now they are like, what am I doing here? This is a bad choice. And that person could potentially become your brand terrorist. And then they're going to go tell everybody how awful you are and you manipulated them into this. It's nothing that you want. And so I always try to tell my students is thinking about if you saw someone at a grocery store that's your customer, what is their reaction going to be to you? And hopefully their reaction is like, oh my gosh, hi Stephanie, how you doing? Or like you want to be the puppy, right? Nobody is ever upset when they see a puppy. Like they see a puppy and it's like cute and cuddly, and you're like, oh my gosh, the puppy. That's what we want to try to be is that person that everybody wants to be around because we add value. We add joy to their life. We make their lives better. So thinking about like harnessing that inner puppy perhaps is useful. The puppy's never
I
gonna
love
hurt
it.
you.
No, and you just, like you said, you want to be around that puppy, and obviously that balance, because what's also a challenge, and we both know this, and we can talk about this, especially in the next segment on the future of sales when it talks to what buyers want more of. But there's also that balance, because sometimes people might hear that and think, oh, I just got to be, again, going back to the Bob Berg advice, people know and trust me. So as long as they know me and like me and trust me, then of course they'll buy from me, right? If they
Mhm.
like being around me like a puppy, and they see me at the store and they like me, that's all it takes to close deals. And obviously that's one portion of it, right? It also takes persuasion, the sales process, like we were just talking about. And so it's like, how do you be the puppy that they want to listen to? But puppies don't talk. So now we're getting weird. But like, where is that in like you said, like again, if you see your clients out and about, are you, are they happy to see you, and are you happy to see them? Which I think is important. And
And
let's go ahead.
and it comes back to those foundations of trust and
Mhm,
having character, right? Doing the right
mhm,
thing even if no one's looking, and really
mm,
having that concern for your clients, right? And being
yeah.
honest with them and building that foundation up, everything can you have that strong foundation so you can build up from there.
And that word that keeps coming up is that concern for them. And that's a word I never really thought of before or used, right? Because the empathy side, a lot of people think, oh, it's empathy. It's like, I care about you. And where's that intersection? Concern is, I care about you, or I'm thinking about you, and I want something for you more than I want something for me, right? That's taking that and putting even more emphasis on you. I'm concerned about you. This has nothing to do with me. I don't care, but this is about you. And I think that's the difference maker, like what we're talking about with this. Let's
Yes.
continue that in the next part, because I think, again, I have so many questions I want to get to, and we'll talk about the future of sales. For people tuning in, again, check the show notes. It'll be in there, all of the links. Please make sure to connect with Dr. Stefanie on LinkedIn. You can find her on there, Bryant University. She will blow up your LinkedIn feed with all kinds of content, I promise. And it's in a good way. Don't worry. Lots of good stuff. And again, one of the things, and I usually mention this after the third episode, but one of the reasons I love people to connect with people like yourself on LinkedIn is because if they're connected with you and they're interacting with the post, or they see them, it will show up on their feed and for other people. And again, part of this is just expanding what we talked about in the first part, where people don't even realize these programs exist and the value and what it means to the students, the employers, to the world of sales. So that's why that's so important to me, just to get that out and amplify that in any way that we can. And then obviously you have your Rainmakers program. We'll have that in the show notes as well, and we'll talk about that in the next one for sure. And again, Dr. Stefanie, thank you for being here, talking about persuasion, sales processes, salespeople actually being concerned for other humans and building the relationships like they would in their own lives. Amazing stuff, and I can't wait till the next segment. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And for everyone tuning in, hopefully you got some value from this. Hopefully you realize your job is to be concerned for other humans, just like you would in your own life, and what's missing maybe in your own relationships, or you could do more of, and be there for other people and listen and ask the right questions, and not just rely on a slide deck to fix your personal relationship issues, just like a slide deck's not going to fix your sales problems. And so hopefully you see some shifts in that. And as always, appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next part. And thank you for helping fill the world with authentic persuaders.